Hello and welcome to Impact the Borough, a podcast from the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brent Christensen, President and CEO of the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. Each week, a Chamber staff member will sit down with a guest to discuss what we're doing to start and grow businesses, create quality jobs, develop our workforce, and tell the inspiring story of Greensboro to the world. This podcast is brought to you by Truliant Federal Credit Union. As one of the largest credit unions in North Carolina, Truliant is proud of its work supporting the businesses and the people that make our communities thrive. Chartered in 1952, today Truliant serves more than 250,000 members, helping them and our community build strong financial foundations. There are 5 locations in Guilford County to serve you. Visit truliant.org for more information.
In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we at the Chamber are working with community partners to mitigate its effects on businesses, both large and small. Each weekday at 3 p.m., we are hosting a daily action call with various experts who can point you to resources and answer questions. In lieu of our regular podcast episodes, we will be sharing highlights from these calls with you each week during this unprecedented time. To hear these discussions in full or to join future calls, visit greensboro.org/COVID-19.
All right, we're at 109 folks at this point. So let's go ahead and get started. It's 3:02. First of all, thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate it very much. It's great to be able to assemble this group, this chamber business group on a daily basis. We started earlier this week on Tuesday talking to a small business expert at Guilford Tech Community College about what business owners and managers should be doing in the next 30 days. We talked yesterday to a banker who helped us go through the process of who you should be talking to, your bank, what you should be talking about, and that sort of thing. Today, we're going to have a different topic, but we actually moved this topic up because we just got word late yesterday afternoon that the state of North Carolina was now eligible for SBA loans based on the crisis that we're going through right now. And so we wanted to move this up quickly because we want you all who are small business owners to be able to access this resource as quickly as possible. So we're all about, as a chamber, connecting people, connecting businesses, connecting problems with solutions. That's no different today than it was last week. And so here we are today working towards that goal. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GSO Chamber for all the latest information. We'll be giving you updates on where we are, what topics we'll be having every day at 3 o'clock. We also send out a summary of these calls every day. And so we actually work on recording the call so you could listen to it again, but we also work to send out summary bullet points of what was discussed on the call. So we do have the recording of yesterday's call with Scott Baker with Town Bank. He had some great information again about what you should be asking your banker. It's a great companion piece to what we'll be talking about today. If you're not a member and you're on this call, all links and resources to the recordings will be on our website at greensboro.org/COVID-19, COVID-19. Last bit of housekeeping. Yesterday we had a couple of questions about volunteer opportunities. We again want to let you all know our friends at One Blood, the main blood supplier for Cone Health, all of their blood drives have been canceled and their supplies are significantly impacted. So we'd love for you to go to oneblood.org. You can schedule a time to donate and even stay in your car until they call you individually into the facility. It's a great way to get involved and help our community. So today we have a couple people from the Small Business Administration joining us. So we'll dive right in. Again, first we have Levi Kennard. Levi is an economic development specialist in the North Carolina district office. He joined that district office in March 2018 from the San Diego district office. Before working for the SBA, Levi founded and managed 2 California corporations in prosthetics manufacturing and government contract consulting. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and a Master's of Business Taxation from the University of Southern California. Welcome, Levi. And if I can figure out how to do this and how to find them on my list, we're also going to have Bob Weston, Director, and Victor Dow, the Assistant Director of the Piedmont Triad region for the Small Business Technology Development Center on the line, and they'll be able to answer questions as well as they arise. So Levi, I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit, and just starting off, talk about this loan. Walk us through the way to apply for them. Who qualifies? How do you apply? What is it? A big softball question, but I know there's an awful lot of information that you need to impart on us as we go forward. With a lot of folks on this call and in our community have never applied for something like this. So help walk us through that at this point.
Well, I want to thank the Greensboro Chamber for having me on today so that I could communicate this great loan that is coming down through the Office of Disaster Assistance. And what we're talking about today is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So as of yesterday, what was necessary for this loan to be available to North Carolina small businesses was that the governor of California needed to designate North Carolina as a disaster area, which he successfully did in the evening last night. Prior to that, the Office of Disaster Assistance, the website in which you would apply online would not have been available to North Carolina companies. As of today, it is. And so what the loan is a low interest working capital loans for small businesses in North Carolina that are located in a disaster area, which North Carolina is now, that is creditworthy according to the disaster assistance and located here. We anticipate several 100,000 loan applications to come through the system, and so a little bit about the loan. It's got a maximum amount of $2 million for an unsecured loan. The maximum amount is $25,000. The interest is 3.75. For nonprofits, it's 2.75. Really, what the Office of Disaster Assistance is looking at is the credit history of the business, the ability to repay, and if the business is located in North Carolina.
So, Bob, who qualifies for this loan? I mean, I understand probably for the first time, and maybe I'm incorrect, that that nonprofits are eligible as well. And I know when we talked a little bit earlier, you talked about the fact that perhaps some of the past regulations might be massaged a little bit, I guess, should we say, in terms of who qualifies and what is needed. What, you know, in the past, you've had to show that you weren't able to secure credit any other way. Talk us through, you know, the changes that you might see or the massaging that might be done in this particular case.
So the disaster loan program, really, this is an unprecedented case. What we have at this point is a disaster with no physical damage. Previously, economic injury disaster loans, you would have had to show physical damage or a depression of revenues coming up to that disaster time. In previous loans, if you did have physical damage, even homeowners would have been eligible to receive the loan. But at this time, because there's no physical damage, the way that the policy is written, small businesses and nonprofits are in fact eligible to receive these loans, and that's a drastic difference. And because we're expecting such a volume, I was on a regional call today with the Office of Disaster Assistance, and what they said is something that might have been some misinformation given out, is that you had to go out to a commercial bank and get a letter that you were in fact denied for a loan, or for instance, to establish credit elsewhere. These have been relaxed. The official guidance by Office of Disaster Assistance is, if you're a small business and you have been impacted by this crisis, apply for this loan. Let the Office of Disaster Assistance tell you no. If you're worried about credit, still apply. If you're worried about credit elsewhere, still apply. So what we want to do is get as many people to submit complete, accurate applications through the Office of Disaster Assistance website as possible. I do want to say the loan, and or the website where you can apply. It's disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA/account/login. And I will definitely email this to bring. You may already have it on the website. In addition, what I want to do is send you all the necessary forms to submit that application. And so what we want suggest to small businesses to do is to fill out these paper applications and then go to the website and then transcribe that into the electronic version, so that you know what information is going to be asked through the website and you have it all prepared. If you do have questions on how to do this, if you need help putting your financial statements together, putting that application together, we have resource partners in the area. I think Bob's on the phone, Bob Weston, with the SBTDC. We also have SCORE in Greensboro, and we have a Women Business Center in Raleigh. And so reach out to one of these resource partners, and if you have any questions about that application process or you need help putting it together, they're great resources.
Great. Great. We're already starting to get some good questions, and we will definitely get to those. And there were some of the questions that I had on my list as well. I know that there's a calculation made in this process on the ability to pay. Talk to us about what goes into that calculation, and what do you see going forward in terms of that particular policy there, Levi?
So, yes, this is a working capital loan. Essentially, what they're going to do is they're going to look at your pre-crisis revenues and pre-crisis costs of operating. And based on that, they're going to do their internal calculation, look at what your working capital needs were prior to the coronavirus, and then look at your ability to repay, which is what were your revenues before, and if your business was fully restored, you would be able to sustain that loan just like a commercial loan. One thing I wanted to say on this point was that they are building into the loan deferment periods, which you can negotiate with the Office of Disaster Assistance. And so you're not going to have to start paying these loans back the minute that you're approved for one. Know that they understand there is going to be a time period for your operations to be restored, and they are taking that into account.
Good. Talk to us about the use of funds. Are there any regulations on what you could use these funds for? Any sort of tracking in that regard?
Yes. So remember, these are working capital loans. And so you can use these to pay, for instance, fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, other bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. The loans are not intended to replace lost sales or profit or for expansion. And so that's really the difference. If what they want to do is be able to restore your business to where it was pre-crisis, you can't use these loans to either consolidate past debts or for business expansion. They're going to look at what your revenues were, what they are today, and then make that calculation based on that. So any working capital costs is what you can use this loan for.
Are there any industries, Levi, that are excluded from this, or is it available to any business?
Yes, there is a couple agricultural enterprises, so ranchers and farmers, for instance, because we do have USDA for those.
Right.
Religious organizations, charitable organizations, small businesses that make more than a third of their revenues from gambling profits, and casinos and racetracks, for instance. But those are the main ones that are excluded. Other than that, if you've been impacted and you're considered small by your NAICS code, the North American Industry Classification System, which is for most of the time for construction and service businesses, this is a revenue level, a 5-year average. If it's for manufacturing, it's going to be an employee level, but most are less than 500 employees. So know what your NAICS code is. Find out what the size standard is associated with that NAICS code, and that will let you know if you are in fact small.
Excellent. A number of questions on our group chat here, Levi, related to collateral. So what does collateral look like? Define what collateral will be considered for secured loans. Can you use personal capital or just business capital as collateral? Just expand a little bit on that, if you would, please.
Yes, there is a collateral requirement for any loans over $25,000. Remember, this is personal and business collateral that you can put up. You don't need to fully collateralize the loan. You just need to, if you're wanting a loan over $25,000, be willing to collateralize the loan with the collateral that you in fact do have. But that is a requirement unless you're only looking for 25,000 or less.
Okay.
But most of the time, sorry about that.
Go ahead, please expand.
Real estate is preferred.
Real estate preferred. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I have a really good question here about, here we are. We're just now seeing the beginning of the crisis impacting business. Should we wait several weeks to determine the financial impact before completing the application?
Absolutely not. If you're seeing an impact right now, remember that what you want to do is get approved for as much funding as possible. And it's easier to get approved for more funding than it is to take a small loan and then ask for another loan later on. What you could do is if you did request quite a bit of money, and later on you just said, well, please don't disperse the remaining funds, because we don't know how long this is going to continue, and nobody can foresee how much it's going to impact their business. So my suggestion at this point, also for the Office of Disaster Assistance, is put your application materials together now and apply as fast as you can.
And you can then down the line cut off the loan, or just say, hey, stop dispersing. I've got enough. I'm good to go at this point, and not be responsible for the remainder that you push the pause button on. Correct?
Absolutely, and that's probably the easiest way to go.
Gotcha. a really good question from what it looks to be a young business that we've got. The year-over-year revenue used to determine need. If you're less than a year old, you're brand new. How are you going to look at something like that?
Well, the credit decision will be based on the Office of Disaster Assistance. But if you don't have, for instance, like you need your prior year tax return, if you don't have that, then you submit your financial statements pro rata that you have and your projections. So as long as you have some revenue and that was established, even for the few months that you were in business, it's the Office of Disaster Assistance can make the credit decision based on that. So what you want to do is get them as much information about the money that you were making, the revenues that you were making, the costs that you were incurring, as clear a picture of your operations as possible, and submit those. You can't submit paperwork you don't have, and they understand that. But what they're looking for is to get a good financial picture of your business pre and post coronavirus.
So don't fear if you're less than a year old. Just do the best you can, is what I'm hearing you say, to paint the financial picture of where you were leading up to about a week ago.
Absolutely.
Maybe less than a week ago. We're
Yes.
It just seems like but it seems like a year ago. Every day seems like a month at this point.
It really does.
So another good question here, for the loans that are up to $25,000. Talk about what, and maybe this is in terms of everything. What terms are we looking at? What are the negotiating items in that sort of thing?
So for loans up to 25,000, but not above, the collateral requirement is not there, and also for all loans up to the 2 million, what you can do is negotiate with the Office of Disaster Assistance on the repayment or the maturity of the loan. They will extend the terms of that loan to reduce the monthly cost to maintain it up to 30 years. And so based on the loan size, the initial loan that you receive, if you extend that out up to 30 years, it ends up being a fairly small monthly installment.
Gotcha. Could you just go ahead? I think there's still some confusion, and we've actually picked up some participants along the way. Define a small business again as to who might be responsible for this, just so that everybody's on the same page going forward, if you would, Levi.
Sure. So the United States government, they track industries not by their name, but by a 6-digit number. And so, for instance, like if you were a Class B construction contractor, you would not be classified as just construction. You'd be 236220. And there's a size standard associated with every one of those numbers. And so with 236220, Class B construction contractor, you're small on your 5-year average revenues if you're below $36.5 million. For most service businesses, it's around the 14 million mark. And if you're in manufacturing, it's an employee level, and most of the times it's 500 employees. And so once you know your NAICS code, which any of our resource partners can speak to, they can help you identify those, or it's as easy as just typing in the industry that you're in and NAICS, NAICS code in Google, and it will tell you what your NAICS code is. It's not something that you have to apply for. It's just a classification system. And then what you can do is find out the size standard associated with that NAICS code.
I think also I'm looking at my screen here. It looks like Bob Weston is joining us from the Small Business SBTDC. Bob, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Yes, David, I'm on it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, there you are, man. I even see a screen.
Oh yeah.
So maybe this is the opportunity for you to talk about the services that you might be able to provide, because some folks are hearing NAICS code for the first time and are maybe starting to get a little bit of heart palpitation with, what am I going to have to do for this? We want to make this easy. So talk a little bit, Bob, about what you might be able to do to help them navigate through this system, if you would.
Yes, and the SBTDC Triad Region team was on the call with the SBA this morning, going over the current application guidelines and that type of thing for this. And the SBA is really trying to make this as easy as possible on everybody who's being affected. The guidance is to go ahead and apply if you realize you have suffered an injury, and most businesses have some. We've gotten lots of calls from people even before the declaration was made for North Carolina. The SBTDC, just for those of you that I see, there's almost a couple hundred people out here, but for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we are the extension for business of the University of North Carolina system. We're hosted here in the Piedmont Triad region by Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T, and UNCG. We've actually been here since 1984, so we've seen a few of these. It's not our first rodeo. We are also a part of the North Carolina's disaster response team, so we're working with the office there. What we do is we counsel and advise businesses. It's a free, confidential service of the university system, and every state has a small business development center program. In North Carolina, we're a little bit unique in that we've been doing it. We were one of the first ones to be accredited and had continuous accreditation since the program began. We have 10 counselors here in the Triad region, and we work by appointment with businesses, anybody, any industry that wants to come. We do a lot of loan technical assistance, but beyond applying for a loan, it's really about looking at your business and determining the strategies and tactics that you can take to mitigate your losses and try to position yourself to be successful through the crisis and beyond the crisis. So we have experts in multiple different areas: general business, accounting, finance, marketing, customer service, and then also government procurement, international business and exporting, technology commercialization assistance. So we've been doing a long time. We're here. We've done these same types of loans. Generally, what we see is we've seen them after the hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and that type of thing. So this is a little bit unusual application, but the key is to start early and get with us or one of the other service providers like SCORE or even the Small Business Center network, the Women's Business Center, and let us help you look through and make sure you've got everything you need for a successful application when you put it in the first time. One great piece of advice that Levi put out there is use the paper application and the checklist and make sure you've got everything. It's hard when you go online and you get in there and you start doing it and then you say, oh, I'm missing 2 pieces that I need to complete this. You can do it, but it's harder to go back than it is to get it all together the first time.
Gotcha. Well, and it's important, yes, it's important to be fast, but it's also important to be complete, is what you're saying as well. So we are going to be, as part of our email follow-up to this, we'll be connecting you with those forms, all of the online resources that you need. Bob, you might want to give out a phone number where you could be reached, or a website. And again, we'll email all this out as well. But I see you're joining us live from the White House, which I love.
I'm just borrowing a friend's office.
I love it. I love it. But give us a phone number, email, website. Where can we go to get connected with you, Bob, to help through this process?
Yeah, well, our offices here in Greensboro are at the Nussbaum Center for Entrepreneurship at the corner of South Elm Eugene and West Florida Street. The offices right now, the Nussbaum Center is shut down for public access. So we're doing all of our counseling virtual through meetings like this on Zoom and phone calls and email and Skype and using technology tools. The local number here is 336-256-9300. In Winston-Salem, if there's anybody on here from there, it's 336-750-2030. And you can always go to our website, sbtdc.org. We will have, we'll have, for all of these disasters, we put up a special web page, and that's going to be up later today. That is a kind of takes you to all the different resources and step-by-step guidance and what you need to do to prepare for these or look for other assistance. And you can always email, if you just email either ncat@sbtdc.org or WSSU@sbtdc.org or UNCG@sbtdc.org, then that'll go into our business counselor, and she will schedule you for an appointment with one of our counselors.
Excellent, excellent. A great question that's on this list, and I'll leave it to you or Levi to answer it, but how long does the process take before funds are dispersed? So walk us through how long we think this might take. Maybe start with
Levi, do you want to take that, or you want me to take it?
Sure. Well, just let me know if I'm wrong. But they have told us that the normal processing time for an application is between 8 and 21 days. This is a good time for me to inform everybody that one of the biggest hindrances to getting a loan out quick is that they'll request information through the message center after you complete your online application, and people aren't checking their message center where that loan officer is communicating with the potential borrower the additional information that they need to process that loan. And so what you can do to ensure that this loan does get out as quickly as possible, and they are trying to, and there is relaxed sort of guidelines here in order to get these loans out as quickly as possible, but make sure that you're checking this message center. And once it's processed and approved, then it's most likely a 5-day distribution period. And so, like I said, they're trying to get these loans out as quickly as possible. And the quicker that you apply, get the loan officer as much information as he needs to process that loan, the quicker it can get to the small business so that they can continue operations amidst this crisis.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it is key. When you do your application, one of the last things that you get is your confirmation with your application number. And you want to print that page out and save that number, because that way, if you have to go back in to see if they're asking for something, and quite frankly, it's not unusual for them to come back and have some type of question about the information or the documents that have been submitted. And we do find that down east, where some of our hurricane disaster loans of this type have been done, is that's often, people think that they can't understand why things are dragging on, and then they've had something in there for a week or two where somebody asked for additional documentation or had a question about some of the documentation, and the borrower didn't respond to it because they didn't know it was there. So you really have to be careful to monitor for that.
Very good. Another question in here. There's some folks who have heard that there might be some forgiveness of loans if they're used for payroll. I think that was bantied about. during the discussions in Washington, D.C. at congressional level. Does anyone know whether that actually got in the legislation, or is that something that's not a part of this? I don't know whether y'all know that or not.
At this point, from the SBA's perspective, we haven't received guidance from headquarters. Anything, I've heard something about this, but I don't know if it's fully approved. But what I can do is look into that and get that information to you, Brent, and
That'd be great.
have that communicated out to the business.
We'll be getting back to it. We also got some folks who wanted to talk about airline industry bailout versus loans for small businesses. Hey guys, these are not policymakers. These are folks who carry out those policies. So I think I'd leave that question to the folks who are policymakers in this process, and give us some questions on the actual nuts and bolts of what we're going to see here. I know some folks on the call, y'all probably have experience with SBA 504 loans and that sort of thing. What's the difference between the typical SBA loans that we all hear about in kind of daily business life and these? Is there anything in particular that that folks on the call might need to know about?
Yeah, I think one thing that. Oh.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Well, yeah, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that for most SBA loans, the 504, the 7A, those loans, it's not actually the SBA lending you the money. It's a lender that's doing it, and the SBA is simply making a guarantee to make the lender more secure should the loan default. So in that case, that's the normal SBA path. On these disaster loans, it's actually the SBA making the loan to you. So it's a little bit different. There's also, for instance, on 504 loans, if you have one of those, some people are worried about, well, I'm already at my cap if I've already maxed out on what I can get from 504 loans. These loans are not affected by that cap because they're not lender loans. They're direct SBA loans.
It's a great point. Levi, anything to add to that?
One, that there's no cost to apply for these loans at all. There's no obligation to take these loans if you are offered them. But yes, as Bob was stating, you may have an existing SBA loan that's not going to affect your ability to get these loans. And back to something that you had asked about earlier, Brent, was collateral. Just as a reminder, they will not deny your loan because of a lack of collateral. So if that is a concern for the small business, go ahead and apply. That's the main message here is put together an accurate application utilizing one of our resource partners, and then apply. And even if it's denied, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I think that the only time that you have to wait to apply again to correct any deficiencies that you had in your original application is 60 days. So it's a low risk, but potentially highly profitable use of your time to apply for this loan as soon as you can.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and another thing and I know Levi covered this already, but sometimes people are worried about putting up collateral and that type of thing. The loan, if it's over $25,000, it has to be collateralized, but it doesn't have to be fully collateralized. You just have to be able to show that you're willing to put up collateral. For under $25,000, it's a signature loan. There's no collateral involved.
Really good question here. I have two small businesses. One is in Guilford County, one is in Forsyth County. Do I apply in one, or do I do a separate app for each? What are kind of the technicalities on that?
It's your main business location.
Okay. But if I owned a restaurant in one place and a manufacturing operation in another place, would that be one loan or two loans?
It depends on, I guess, this corporate structure of the two restaurants. If they were the same entity, but just an extension from that singular entity, then what I would suggest is that you apply for the loan for the businesses that are impacted in the disaster area. But since both of those counties are designated as disaster areas, it's really for the overall company.
Gotcha. All right, guys, we're getting real technical here on some of these questions. S Corp in Guilford and an LLC in Forsyth, holding company in Greensboro for a company based in Florida and one in North Carolina. As we go through this, I don't want to go down a wormhole with having to respond to everybody's specific structure or needs. Talk a little bit about what people need to be thinking about and where they could find some of those answers, or just give you all a ring.
Yeah, I would say the first thing is let's sit down with one of our counselors and let us help you walk through it. But the loans are based on the primary business location, so that's the way they're going to be done. And I think all of North Carolina is covered right now, Levi.
It is, and continuous counties in South Carolina.
Well, and I get a sense, y'all, this is a 50-state disaster. So, I mean, I would assume that eventually every state's going to be covered in this, correct?
I wouldn't be surprised. It does require that the governor apply.
Right.
All governors that are going to probably be here after the next term are probably applying. So,
right. So I would suggest those of y'all who have very specific questions like those, again, give Bob and TDC a ring or an email or that sort of thing. But ultimately, what we wanted y'all to get out of this was it's time to apply. And it's time to make sure that you're applying for enough to get you through what you think the term of this is going to be. I saw one question that said, hey, I started seeing issues with my business back in January based on issues in China. So I'm assuming that had some supply chain issues back then. And so you could absolutely go back to January and say, this is when I started to see it. I'm going to show you my business before that. It may not have started. My impacts were much before March. And so what I think I would hear you all say, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, is every individual case is going to be different. But you just are going to have to show where that impact happened.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it may sound a little bit contradictory, but what we're advising clients is don't hesitate. So you need to go ahead and get started, but be patient, as much as you can. It's not like instant coffee. It's like slow brew. It's like cooking barbecue. It's going to take a while for it to take place, but, get the process started, especially being sure to track what your losses are. And sometimes it takes some analysis to actually realize what all the losses involved are going to be and how much working capital you need.
Levi, do you have anything to add to that?
That as long as you're communicating all of your business costs and revenues from your historical data and now, the Office of Disaster Assistance, which you can communicate with directly, and they can have even more accurate answers, they're going to make that determination on their end. And so you don't have to necessarily sit down and really calculate out your losses. It's just about putting that financial information into the application and getting that to the Office of Disaster Assistance so they can do their assessment.
Very good. Very good.
One additional caution that I'd just like to share is I was a private consultant. I love private consultants. I know a lot of private consultants, but everybody needs to understand that there is no fee to apply for these loans, and just be cautious if somebody comes up to you and says, "Yeah, we're the official place to to help you apply for your SBA loan, and by the way, we need a check," because that's you may decide to hire a consultant, but you're not required to hire a consultant.
That's a really good point. I appreciate that a lot, because you're right. There will be some new business types that will pop up through this, and you're right. If you need that help and you want to pay for it, sure, go for it, but it's not required. Very good. I think our questions have slowed down. I will thank both of the folks who have joined us today, our experts, Levi Kennard and Bob Weston. I know you guys are going to get real busy here very soon. Let me tell you how deeply appreciative we are as a business community for all of the help that you're going to provide to us. You're going to be heroes in this for a number of folks, including a number of our businesses, and we can't thank you enough for doing that. So we'll thank you going forward, but we'll also thank you for your time and your expertise today. Thanks for being willing to do this.
Thank you.
So before we close, we'll be back on again tomorrow at 3:00. We'll have some HR experts on with us to answering questions or talking about what you all need to be thinking about from your human resources standpoint during this time. And so we'll have some really good expertise there. Lastly, and I know we've kind of run long, we've tried to keep these things to 30 to 35 minutes. Today's call was just information packed, so we let it go as long as we possibly could. But I will say one more thing before we go, and I'll make this pitch again. I got my census form in the mail today. If you got some time, make sure that you're filling out your census. It's going to be imperative for us as a community and as a state to make sure that we're getting the funding, the federal funding that we so need and deserve, as well as representation in DC. So please, please, please fill out your census form and encourage others to do so as well. Holly has just sent out that chat. Thanks for joining us. We'll send all those links and numbers and other important information. Thank you, Holly, for that, and for Megan Mabry. And then you can go and look at the archive if you need additional information. But we'll be back on same spot tomorrow at 3:00. We hope that you all will join us. Until then, have a great day. Thanks so much, everybody.
This podcast is brought to you by Truliant Federal Credit Union. As one of the largest credit unions in North Carolina, Truliant is proud of its work supporting the businesses and the people that make our communities thrive. Chartered in 1952, today Truliant serves more than 250,000 members, helping them and our community build strong financial foundations. There are 5 locations in Guilford County to serve you. Visit truliant.org for more information. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube thanks to our video sponsor, North State. Impact the Borough is recorded at Press Play Studios. Producers are Brody Cohen Glaze and Holly West. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at GSO Chamber. See you next time.